Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio, and welcome to the video number 3 of the virtual apprenticeship. My name's Clint Button. I'm a granite sculptor. I don't want to fake anything with this video. It's another day's gone by. It's sunny out today. It ain't any warmer, but it's not raining. So it's still pretty cool. The last couple videos I've done it here in front of these models that I'm working on. These are all jobs that are already sold, already cut, already gone, shipped them either just a little while ago or a while back. And there's videos on most of them already on my channel. And so I've started doing rubber on them to cast them just with hardware store, plain silicone, silicone 1, clear silicone. And I'm going to go ahead and get these wrapped up because, this plywood I need for a model is sitting on the bankers I want to show you, and, to show you other tools and equipment in the studio. This is what I'm doing. This is just another day in the life. This is what I'm doing. And so I don't want to just pretend that this isn't happening and try to sugarcoat, sanitize this video. There's a lot that's going to be required to become fluent in this work. And you've got to be able to understand a number of things all at the same time. Even if you're only working on personal work and you're working in a very linear fashion, it's good to be able to understand where you're going to end up, because that's sort of the whole point of carving a piece of stone, is you've got to have a vision and a perspective to see what isn't obvious, and you've got to know how to get there. And there could be a lot of steps along the way that may not seem obvious. So right now I'm gonna spend today hopefully and get I've already put a coat of rubber on all these. This is just the plain silicone, and I've got to go through with some foam and resolve all the draft on these. These are done. I'm just going to hang them on the wall for reference, but it all provides portfolio stuff, because the more you do helps people a lot to see what you can do. If you say, hey, I'm a sculptor, and they can look at what you've actually done, even if it is in a different media, whether it's in plastilina, whether it's in plaster that's more durable, so that when it's sold and shipped and gone, they can look at it and go, wow, I like that. And one of the nice things to do is to be able to do additional jobs of the same composition, especially when it's your own, and these are all originals, because you typically do a better job with them. You'll understand things that work well, things that you wanted to try, or you may have done such a good job the first time it's pretty hard to match it, and that happens sometimes too, because every copy is either better or worse than the original. So had to put on tight fitting clothes because I'm going to be working with silicone, and anything for loose cuffs, I wanted to hackle them to fall off or be loose. I needed to pull up on my head or anything. It's not quite as cold. It's still pretty cool out, but so I want clothes that aren't going to foul my work. I'll take everything out of my pockets. There's a habit that I get into, and I usually work with empty pockets on stone. It'll rub through, and so I just get comfortable in my space. And so we'll fill in with some video. You're going to have to do some extra work on this whole process. You're going to have to strive. You need to get some clay. You need to start practicing shapes. You need to think about all this. You don't have to, but I think you should. And so I'll show you some of what I'm doing. There's extensive video on using both a waste mold, doing a line fold project. I did a few videos on that, where we put plaster over a job, over clay, and then when the plaster cures, we evacuate the clay, slip the mold, release the mold, and then charge it with new plaster, and then let that set, and then carve it off, which gives you a one-time shot. Or doing a disposable silicone, a reusable silicone mold with just hardware store silicone, and filling it in with rubber filling the underneath all your undercuts so that your mother will release. I learned this from a sculptor named Ryan Mays that had learned it down in Arkansas. He came to Barry and he worked there with us at Celestial, and he showed us, and it works really well. It's not cheap like it used to be, but it works really well. So I'll let you watch over my shoulder so I'm doing this. We'll get this work resolved, and I may put this one up. This hummingbird and iris is pretty complicated, lots of undercut, so I've got to spend a little more time focused on that. But these are pretty easy. Irises, I mean the tulips, lots of videos on those on my channel with panel work and everything. There's daffodils, the dove that we just cut a little while ago, video on that, and then there's like an older Echo Homo that I did that has been hanging around. I just need to cast it, get it back in the bucket. So we'll get these working, get these cast, and then this will be kind of this won't be as much of a how-to. This will just sort of you watching over my shoulder while we're getting started and you're thinking about it. So thanks for coming in, hang around, watch what's going on, and see how you like it. Okay, I've got everything done up with undercuts filled with just some old used foam rubber, and they've got to dry, but I've got all these done, getting things picked up so that they're organized. And I can put some plaster on them for the mothers. But while I'm doing all that and silicone's drying, let's do some metal patterns real quick. Got a little one we got to do from leftover from the last job, just catching up on small jobs, so check it out. This is a pattern for a 8x10 oval. One side's 4, one side's 5 inches, and I just eyeballed it and made an oval. This is what we use for the dove. So I'm gonna turn this into a metal pattern to hang on the wall. May use it again, may never use it again, but while I've got time, that's what you do. So let's go up the shop and cut a little bit of tin and make a pattern. So I'm going to take and use a piece of scrap tin, trimmed off an edge here. I want to leave it long, both here and here, so I can have a square end. So if I've got to set this up, I'm going to try to make these 90 degrees. So if I have to set this up and make an oval, it's real easy to put a center line both ways and put the oval right where I want it. Makes the pattern useful, and it's a lot less fragile if it doesn't have these skinny points on it. It'll make it more durable. So let's see if we can give that a shot. And there we go. Now I cut that right on the edge of the line that I scribed, so I've got a little bit of room to go back and clean up, because it is a rough edge. It'll cut you, but we'll probably round that corner just so it doesn't stab me. Pop a hole in it. You can drill a hole, punch a hole, use a nail, whatever. Mark 8x10 niche, or 8x10 oval, and we'll put it on the wall with the rest of them where it belongs. So now I'll put this back with my dove papers, staple them together. I generally keep stuff like this together. I've got a file cabinet, and I'll just sort it in a drawer, and I'll put all this together. I'll put a staple in it. That was the Dove. Finished job. There's lots of videos on it. And I'll take this. I scribed it in there with an awl and wrote it on there so it's easier to see, but that'll probably fatigue. And then I'll put it right up here with all the other patterns. And it's surprising. There's a lot of patterns that you use once. And then there's other patterns that get reused in whole or part quite often. It's surprising. There's some patterns that you find shapes. I've even got, you know, regular ones that are just 1.5 inches, and these can be extended. I can take that out and make it longer if I need to. I'll just pop another couple holes. And there's a 2-inch border. I've used these a lot. This is the kind of thing you've got to set your shop up. And if you buy the tools, buy, you know, some tin snips, these patterns on the bottoms are old patterns. Had those for, you know, those came from an old shed that were tearing down, and they're probably older than I am. But all the brighter ones are ones I've cut and used for various jobs, and they it's just, they're worth their weight in gold to have them hanging there. And all these tools are crew. So one more lesson. It's another day, a couple days into it, had to wait. Weather warmed up, so it had a chance to do the plaster in warmer weather, so I put it off. And for yesterday and then today, it's supposed to cool off in another day or two. So we'll try to get this cast pretty quick. I put boards, reinforcement on these tulips because they're very long, skinny, and there's not a lot of torsional strength in this. When you're doing something that's relatively square or even a sturdy rectangle, this is hydrocal, a lot stronger than regular plaster. It works better. These would have been real prone to having the mother break in the middle, and a broken mother's no good. So I cut the boards, drilled some holes, ran just some twine through it to help locate it, and now I'll take them apart. These should all be constructed from the back, so I can deconstruct them pretty easily. If you're careful, you should be able to pull the plaster off, the mother off, and not disrupt the original clay much, so you could actually fix it if the mold didn't turn out the way you wanted it, rework the model and do it again. This is what I was talking about maximizing my profit, minimizing my cost. I'm trying to get by with the bare minimum. I may cast these tulips more than once. The rest of these I kind of doubt. Maybe the dove, but I'll try to take these apart without breaking the mothers and without really worrying about salvaging the clay underneath to keep it intact. I just want to get them apart because we got to get this done. So I'll wrap them, try to loosen them to break. And that alone sometimes will be just enough that you can get under there and lift the whole thing off and leave it all together. I've got a corded impact driver that I use for doing all this work. What I found is that the cordless ones that everybody seems to love, I go for weeks or months at a time when I'm in a big stone project, and I never have to do anything wood. And so in that meantime, I don't need to keep a battery charged for 6 or 8 months because it wrecks the battery. And then I try to charge the batteries, and the batteries won't hold the charge because they haven't been regularly used. And if I try to replace the batteries, they've updated them with some brand new technology. So a cord doesn't get very outdated, and it works really well for me. So if your schedule runs like my schedule does, you might be better off with a corded tool. And these corded impact drivers are really great. Sometimes, like this one, let go all the way around, but that's just the way it goes. So we'll try on the next one to be more careful. As long as I'm capturing the important information, that's really all that matters. Now this is one that was done by someone that came here to do some apprenticeship work, and she did this part of it. We never went past that with this one. So this rubber's been on here for a long time, like at least a year or two before COVID. So there's some thin spots. I didn't do anything to it. I just thought I'd throw some plaster on and see how it went. Didn't have big expectations, and it's pretty thin. So she did this one and she cast another one, but this one's really sticking to the clay. So it'll probably cast, it'll be tough to cast because the rubber leaks, and so there'll be some it's actually got holes in it. So, but it'll work just fine. Not worried about this. That'll give me some relief to get it out. Like I said, this is all about how little you can do to get the result you want. Now, I could have put a ton of plaster on these and they would have held up and been great, but I'm trying to play the game to see how close I can get and still have a successful result. Now this Ecohomo's probably thin. So what I'm going to do, because I started taking it apart, before I disrupt this, because it is still thin and it's not coming apart well. This has been hanging around for at least a decade. And just because I liked it. So what I'm gonna do, because I gotta cast these others and I'll have plaster on, I'm gonna go ahead and mix some more up and slip it. Well, it won't hold perfect, but it'll help. And I'll see if that one will come out, because this has got some cracks up in here where it's relatively thin. And so I'd like to thicken that up at least. The borders, I'm never really worried, because it's pretty easy to lay it down and flatten the border out. And then even if you put a little dam around it with cardboard or something, you can get it leveled up and have a relatively flat border, even if you screed it off afterwards. But so we'll see if we can pour that one thicker. This is what I wanted to show you. You've got to work with the way things go. It'd be real easy to put a whole bag of plaster, you know, or half a bag of plaster, make this thing an inch or two thick all the way across, but I don't need it. And so I want to do as little as I possibly can to get a good result. These are pretty thick, and they're complicated anyways, but they're pretty thick. They should come apart reasonably well. So we'll see if this one starts to fall apart too, and then we'll just keep going. But this is reality. This is the way it really goes. Not, I'm going to do 6 takes to show you and just show you the good parts. Also coming out a little bit on the side. I expected it to, but I've had trouble keeping walls vertical, and this is kind of an odd piece where it's got one side is there and the other side isn't. So I think it's still going to work just great. Like I said, I could put a lot more hydrocal plaster on here, make it a lot stronger, and I really do recommend using hydrocal over plain plaster. It's not much difference in price, and you get a lot better quality result with it. It's just a lot stronger. It isn't dental stone, but we'll talk about that, discuss that in another video. Once again, this is about getting the most for the least. This isn't about producing a perfect result, because this is just part of the process. So you can easily put more into it. That's not a big deal, but it really turns out how much time and money you want to spend on it. And where these are just going to be wall hangers, one of the things that you will come across is that there's a lot of old studios out there. You see pictures, they got all their models hanging on the wall. Well, just like I do. What you're supposed to do when you retire or die, you're supposed to take them all out back and smash them. That's the right thing to do. That's the historically appropriate thing to do, because it's your work, and if somebody copies your work and then says, see what I did, they're not necessarily being honest. So by taking your models and wrecking them, they can't copy your original work at a later time. Now some people don't, you know, nowadays they see a collector's value in it, but it's you want to go by the book, that's the old way of doing it. Take them outside and take a hammer and smash them on. And then as you work, you get better at it. And where these were both basically identical, this one is deconstructing a lot easier than the other one was. Because I know where it gives and where it flexes and where it doesn't. And so that's what you'll learn. And so you got to, everything's got to be balanced. You got to have a balance of how things are done. Because you're not getting paid to do everything to the very absolute best that you possibly can. Most people are stingy with their money. They just would rather keep it than share it with you. I'm going to redo this Oklahoma one completely at this point. I'm not happy with it, so I'm just going to redo the whole thing. So I'm not worried about it at all. I'll strip it off and we'll, but this has got some draft on the edges of the actual blocking and everything, where I let it run down past the plywood, and so it's a little more of a juggling act to get it apart. And but my concern is the model, the actual mold, not the rest of this. So, because I think I got good rubber on this one. Now you can make these and cut them different so they lift out easier and everything. Like I said, it just depends on what your priorities are. Now, this one has got some draft here on the mother, but because the mold doesn't extend that high, I'm not really concerned about it. And if you're careful, you could put burlap in them and that'll help support them. If they crack a little bit or they break, obviously it held on. And so a lot of times if you are careful and don't have excessive failure, that little bit of movement, that little bit of release will let you get the positive out when you cast it. Now these blocks, these register blocks that go into the corner also help hold it together. It gives it just a little bit of flex. Because you're always going to have some. It's tough to do it. You can put a lot of extra material on, but we're always trying to get the most or the least. And trying to get by with as little as possible, especially with stuff like this that's just ornaments to hang on the wall. It's not like I had to point these jobs, because when I've got a serious model, then and I'm being paid to do a model, that's a whole different thing. These are sketches for my benefit. And so I can kind of do whatever I want with them. That's a good chance to see just how far I can push the envelope. And, you know, sometimes it works really well, and sometimes you should have been a little more careful. But in the end, you learn. And this one, I'm even less concerned about the niche because I did it just with 2x4s, even though the actual work is nowhere near that deep. And so it's not a normal niche like I would do that would be accurate to, you know, 1.5 inches or 2.5 or whatever. This is, you know, so it's 3.5 inches deep. All I want's the interior. So I can fix the depth however I want. Yeah, see, the rubber only came up to the clay. And so it's going to hold on and break and fail. This one's kind of waiting for it to fail, but wanted to try it just to see. So now this is actually useful. You'll take this material, this old plaster, hydrocal, whatever, and you can, you know, break it up into a usable strip, let that dry. Now you got something to mark your stone with, because you had to pay for it. You see, this mother will probably lift right off of here. This will do just fine. You see, that mother's great, and this is notably thicker than the Echo Home. So, but this is so deep that I really didn't want to make it full depth anyways. Sometimes you'll have something that grabs and locks, and you'll have to go in and cut it to relieve your mold. So when you cast it, it doesn't break your plaster. But that's it. So we'll get this picked up and run some plaster. Okay, I think we're going to wrap this video up. It's long enough. I'm going to, instead of trying to squeeze this in, we'll just put some of this process on the next video. I'll pick up right where we're leaving off. Not going to change anything. I just cleaned up a little bit, and but we'll cast these and start on that in just a few minutes, and then I'm gonna probably the first thing I'm gonna do is we'll do a new mother on this and show you. That's why it's one of the big benefits of doing these rubber molds, and I'll talk about it a little bit on the next one. So, but we got a lot to do, a lot to discuss. I hope this is you're enjoying this. And there's a lot to think about, so, but it'll all start coming together. So hang in there, and we'll get on to video number 4. So once again, my name's Clint Button here at Carolina Sculpture Studio with the virtual stone carving apprenticeship. And thanks for coming in.